Today, I'm honored to have here on another edition.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. I can tell you one thing. I had a very, very busy day. I had a big interview with El Senor Patrick Lovell. I also had to go out to a protest that these great women, mostly women, but men as well, in Kingwood, have been putting on. I can tell you that I was concerned for a while, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Let me do the right thing and tell all you guys that have come in early, hello, welcome aboard. Number one in the house today is Senor Evan QG, El Senor Michael Rutnan from Brooklyn, New York. We got Patrick Magner, Houston, Texas. We also have Yvette Avery Herod, Atlanta, Georgia. Welcome aboard, beautiful. We have in the house Maz Maniac here in Houston, I believe. Paul Fleming in Powder Springs, Georgia. Eric Hayes in Kingwood, Atascocita. On our other side of the chat aisle, we've got Barb DeYoung, Silak Yurkic, Dan, Peter Burr, Mead Powers. Autumn says, hey, scary times we are in. Yes, we are, but times that we will exit just fine. Greg Owens is in, Cynthia Meno, Al Hammett, Mary Femke, Jean Eunice, Ines Miller, and more. Remember, we lose the first few dozen on Substack when they come in, because again, I don't know. I don't do the technical stuff behind the scenes on Substack. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started with some of the stuff that Michael brought in. Let's see. Michael says, Newies, Trump says he will designate Antifa a major terrorist organization, but he faces a big legal problem in trying to do so. There's no federal process to list a domestic group as a terrorist organization. The way the State Department lists foreign groups, Antifa, short for anti-fascist, is an umbrella term for multiple far-left groups and is not an official organization with any hierarchical structure, making it difficult to legislate over. Trump has repeatedly threatened to make the terrorism designation, notably in 2020, when protests over George Floyd's murder shook the nation. His latest push comes against the backdrop of the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk by the far-right Groyper. Yes, thank you. A Groyper. It's not by the left, it's by the right. Antifa is not an organization. Antifa is an idea. Don't surrender in advance of fascists. Fight them every step of the way until your country is no longer. Look, it is important. The problem is when you lie to your constituents, things, and then you get power, and then you have to execute. And then what normally happens is people find out it's a damn lie. We had the FBI director, Patel, was out there talking about these Epstein letters, and they're out there, and the files are there, and the list is there, and all of that they were talking about while they weren't in power. Then they came into power, and they thought their people would forget about all these bad things Democrats did under Epstein. Unbeknownst to them, it's their holy Führer who actually had a deep-seated relationship with Epstein. So much so that he had a letter that he sent them. A love letter. Not a love letter, birthday letter, but you know, with a drawing of a purported naked woman in which his signature became pubic hairs. Then you had, of course, Antifa. He wants to look strong, so he goes and he writes on his, again, the guy doesn't have a lot upstairs. He goes and he writes, we are going to put Antifa on the terrorist list. There's no Antifa. You know, these guys just say words. It doesn't matter to them because they don't critically think. The people that follow them, that is, right? That's why we have to help and try to get to these people to try to get some critical thinking in there. Antifa is not an organization. Antifa is an ideology. Anything anti-fascist. So you could have an individual coming out of their house that somehow says, this is a fascist thing and I'm going to do something about it. That's Antifa, right? Come on, folks. Wake up. All right. Watch Jimmy Kimmel's comment about Charlie Kirk that got his ABC. Okay, I'm not going to put that out right now, but because I want to move on. I have a long program here. But here's the deal, folks. Bottom line is this. I can't read all of it today, Michael. Here's the bottom line. The bottom line is that what Kimmel got fired for is actually for telling a truth. It is sad, but he got for telling the truth. All right, look, I got to get started. I was very concerned about our protest here that's constant in Kingwood, but I'm happy now after watching these ladies. I want you to listen to this and then we'll take it on the other side. By the way, folks, Cindy is the leader,
founder.
The founder of Indivisible Kingwood, the first person that has brought over 700 people out in this conservative town. And if you listen to what's going on around here, folks, these cars are not giving fingers. They're blowing. Very few fingers, but mostly horns blowing.
Had one guy drive by and say MAGA is the future. That's really frightening to me that they think fascism is okay.
But you said one thing. You said one guy. In the past, when we were doing this with Occupy, etc., it wasn't one guy. It was many. It was most. Now we're seeing a change. Anyway, Cindy, how you doing this morning?
I am a little bit irritated. I'm still pondering the fact that we're really being bullied into losing our First Amendment rights.
With Jimmy Kimmel and Colbert.
Crazy. And I know it's all about money behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But they're using this whole Charlie Kirk's murder as a pretense for all of this fascist crap. And I'm sick of it. Well,
look, they can use it. The thing about it is this. For the longest time, when they do things like this, we never did what? What's your sign says?
Fight back.
We never fought back. In other words, we allowed them to hold on to the narrative.
Right.
But now we have you. We have them.
Right.
We have Mr. Here. We have people that are doing what?
Fighting back.
And that's what it takes. If you want your democracy, what do you do for it?
You have to stand up for it and protect it and fight for it.
Exactly. And that is what I came out here. Let me tell you, I have an interview to do in 20 minutes. I came out here because I said, if you guys are brave enough to be here.
Yeah, it was a little tense this morning. I'm like, oh, okay, right. Here we go. I'm wearing my body cam. If somebody tries to do something violent to me, at least it'll be filmed. Right.
And I said, you know what? All of us have to make a presence. And no matter what, even if you're going to make a start one, you got to do it. Right. But anyway, give America a statement.
Give America a statement. Guys, get off the couch. Fascism is already here. You need to fight.
In other words, it's not that we are falling into autocracy. No, we are now there.
We are so in it.
Cindy Hendrickson, thank you for all you do.
Thank you for coming out.
Herman Trivolino.
Herman, why did you decide to come out today?
Because I can't just sit around and watch this country descend into fascism.
Now, is that just a cliche, or do you really believe that?
Oh, it's happening. I mean, when I heard about last night about Jimmy Kimmel, I mean, that was That's an unprecedented thing. I mean, he says something one night, and then the next day he's suspended.
The funny thing about it is that what he said wasn't something that the FCC has the right to take away your license for.
No, but what Trump is doing is he's taking his billionaire friends who control the media, and he's influencing them. So these companies that can, that are the parent companies of the media outlets, like CBS and ABC, they're in control and they're afraid of losing profits, so they just kowtow to Trump.
Yeah, it is sad, but I mean, like I tell most people, democracy is one of the hardest types of societies to maintain because it requires, first of all, it requires an educated population.
Yeah.
And that's what you guys are doing out here. All these signs that you guys have out here have value and make people think. Your thoughts?
Well, yeah, that's true. All of this is important. We need to protest. We need to do everything we can. But I think that, to me, the key thing that we need to do is we need to register young adults to vote.
Repeat that, please. Repeat that, please.
There has never been a time in my history, and I spent 34 years as a college instructor, and I have colleagues who teach history, and, they say the same thing. There's never been a time in our history where young people are so upset and so involved in what's going on in politics. So I think the way for us to succeed is to get people to vote. But especially I think that young group is where I can best spend my efforts trying to get those young adults registered to vote. Let's take back the House and, move on from there. Because really, Jamie Raskin is famous for many things, but he's also a constitutional
scholar.
A professor of constitutional law. He's a scholar, and he says that people say we have 3 equal branches of government, but he says if you read the Constitution, that's not true. All the power really lies with Congress. Congress can stop the president. Congress can stop the Supreme Court. They have the power to impeach them. They have the power to change the way the Supreme Court is set up. They have all the power. All they have to do is exercise it. And right now, what we've got is lying cowards who will not stand up for the very things that they themselves believe in.
Thank you so kindly. I think that's the best place to end it. Hello, Vicky. I can't leave this place without speaking to the Queen. How you doing, sis?
I'm great this morning, Egberto. I'm always great on a day where we can express our First Amendment rights.
Well, let me tell you, I heard you guys didn't show up for good reason last week.
That is correct.
But, my biggest concern was whether you're going to keep this up. And when Cindy told me that you were going to, I said I had to come out and speak to you guys because I'm telling you, I am so proud of what you guys are doing because without you guys, we're not going to win this thing.
I hear you. And we have to keep it up. We can't be afraid.
Right.
We can be safe.
Right.
We can be concerned, but we can't be afraid.
Well,
and if we do become afraid, we just have to face the fear and keep moving forward.
That's exactly what you guys are doing. Thank you, Vicky, for what you're doing, okay?
Thank you for coming out. We really, really appreciate you.
Thank you. Have a good one. All of our country's problems, from polarization to ignorance on domestic and international issues to a complete misunderstanding of our economic and healthcare systems, are a direct result of a derelict. There we go. There we go. I kind of messed up and couldn't get the right button hit at the right time. Okay, I have another piece here. John Carter, you're right. Indivisible Kingwood. These guys are rock stars. They are out there. They've been doing it week after week. Just missed last week for good reason. But anyhow, I have another one that I've got to start playing, and we are kind of rushing on time. So let me get that out now.
Today, I'm honored to have here on another edition of Politics Done Right on Egberto Off the Record, the one and only, the con producer, Patrick Lovell. He visits with us. We're going to talk about the Jimmy Kimmel emergency is what I'm going to call it, the Fed, as well as fascism. And he wants me to make sure to say the big tie-in knot here is, in fact, corruption. Welcome aboard, Patrick. How you doing today, sir?
All honor and respect to you, my man, and my brother, Egberto Willis. I deeply, deeply appreciate you and all that you do for we the people.
Thank you, my brother. Last night, as I'm blogging and I see this breaking news come up, and breaking news is really kind of a cliche these days because everything is breaking news on cable channel because, it's like eyeballs. We're going to have breaking news all of the time. So I just kind of skimmed it back. Then I turned back again and I saw Kimmel. And then I said, OFHIT, please don't tell me the second domino has fallen. And in fact, that is exactly what we got. The second domino fallen of many more to fall if we don't get the job done. Anyway, Patrick, let's start there. What's your thoughts on what just occurred with Jimmy Kimmel?
Well, I appreciate the introduction, especially the C word, because people now are finally starting to be in tune and wake up and open their eyes to the fascism that is naked, that is right in front of our face, that's happening on an ongoing basis. And preceding the Jimmy Kimmel announcement, we had let's see, what are we right now? Thursday. So it must have been Monday when I discovered it, or Tuesday, but I think he recorded it last week. And what I'm referring to is Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller, who I don't know if a lot of people really know what his position is within the administration. Stephen Miller is the actual chief of staff. And from what I understand, as a result of that, he's pretty much got control of 3 agencies because we've got an incompetent president, which we all know, who happened to just respond to, the latest revelation of the Venezuelan bombings, right? I think he said the real murderers are the drug dealers that murdered over 300 million Americans. What? President Trump? I think there's 360 million Americans in the United States. And to have him have a guffaw like that far exceeds anything that he ever talked or we ever talked about, quite frankly, regarding Biden. But I digress because Stephen Miller said, which I would have never seen if it didn't pop up on my social media feeds, but Stephen Miller said to Sean Hannity, we're going to take the assassination of Charlie Kirk by left-wing domestic terrorists, and we're going to use the full force of the police to basically control the money. And he was sending a message to, organizations, foundations, professors, anybody who's not on board the MAGA, train, and they're going to wage outright war on all of the, let's say, elements of resistance, right? Which anybody who knows anything, and I shared this with all of the professionals that I engage with, that we call the new untouchables, the best prosecutors and regulators from 4 decades of fighting white-collar corruption. And I shared it with them because here's the fascism I've been warning about, as many of us have for some time. But what my cut to and my caveat is corruption births and fuels fascism. So what have we seen over the course of the last basically 6 months that Jimmy Kimmel is a part of? They're going after the most known, the most entrenched powers in the United States to make examples of them. It started with universities, then it bled into, of course, all things, the deal with Paramount Pictures and 60 Minutes and investigative journalism, not to mention all of the lawsuits for libel and everybody capitulating. I think I mentioned tall building law firms. And in that sort of domino, we've seen corporation after corporation after corporation bending the knee, using a Game of Thrones reference, and kissing the ring. And of course, we saw last night, did we not, that Donald Trump was in England, literally at Windsor Castle, meeting with all of the, the King of England, and not to mention, all the powers that be in England. But the point being is that, my friends, it is here. It has arrived. Fascism is right in front of your face. They're shoving it down our throats. But if you don't understand corruption, you don't understand causality, and nor do you understand the way to be able to turn the tables on this madness.
Now, interestingly, and this is what gives me a bit of pause. Let's assume that right now Disney wasn't in talks for that merger. Would they still have let a cash cow like Jimmy Kimmel go when the administration protested?
No, and I think that's the exact point. There's the mega mergers and all of we've seen this for now 4 decades, mergers and acquisitions to create larger and larger corporate behemoths that have more and more ownership because we've deregulated the scenarios, particularly as it relates to conflicts of interest, which then lead to more and more power in the hands of the few, that now we're looking right down the gauntlet of Larry Ellison, who he and his son with Skydance and the mega merger of Paramount, that of course is going to kneecap things like 60 Minutes, which already have been kneecapped by corporations. But to your point, that's the power. So it's like, okay, the president has the power to be able to prevent these mega mergers, which obviously affects their shareholder value and their portfolios and all of the other mechanisms of, profit margin. And so therefore, that's why they capitulate. It's a fusion. It's, I call it corporate fascism.
It's, I want people to understand what Jimmy Kimmel, what they claim Jimmy Kimmel did, because I want folks to see how insidious this is. Here are his words. We had some new lows over the weekend when, with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. That's the statement that he got, quote unquote, fired for. First of all, I want to make it clear that statement is a true statement. So while they're out there trying to say otherwise or trying to say that he's fomenting whatever the hell they're saying he's fomenting, that statement that Kimmel made there is a true statement. And I want to ensure that enough of us point that out so that Kimmel doesn't go back and attempt to take it back to get the job back. Because Kimmel can do better away from Disney anyway. But the statement that Kimmel made was accurate, concise. Mr. Tyler Robinson was a part, first of all, he grew up in a very conservative MAGA household. And the only thing that happened there, and I will change subject in a minute, Patrick, but I want our audience at large to realize this. Many a times I've said, what happens when a gun-touting culture finds out that something they used to think they believe in was not true, number one, or number two, when they realize that they've been had and in umbrage to your program, they've been conned. What happens when these people find out they're conned? They're armed. And I don't want to just assign blame without notice, but let's be clear here. Based on his new relationship, he found out he was conned. And the hate that he then was able to see coming from his side gave a reaction. It is bad. I'm not condoning anything, but I am trying to put some context into what occurred. Jimmy Kimmel was right. Continue, my brother.
Well, and the whole point of late night talk show host is to reflect and refract through a medium of satire or comedy and kind of laugh at the crazy world we're all dealing with, right? So that's what has been a long-standing tradition going back to Johnny Carson. And this is just part of the American lexicon, is it not? And to have a scenario where you just mentioned that not only did Jimmy Kimmel state something that was true, but in context that something should not even be a lightning rod. It's just another application of power in terms of what the Trump administration is able to influence because of all of these other elements that we're talking about, mega mergers and this and that and the other. And one thing that I think has been very positive as a reaction to this, I'm seeing all over my social media feeds, people are like, boycott Disney. Now, we'll see how many people boycott ESPN as a result of college football, especially in that great state of yours down in Texas where football is king, right? So good luck with people, not watching football. I mean, this is part and parcel to the whole mega merger culture, but really to get to the situation at hand, which is no laughing matter, right? I mean, we've got so many questions about Tyler Meason. By the way, that happened right down the street from where I live, not too far from where I live. I live in Utah. So I've been watching this closely and I'm very familiar with all of the ramifications of course, the reaction from our governor and all of the FBI, scenarios, not to mention what appears that this guy, Tyler Robinson, is this strange sort of, amalgamation of everything you just mentioned, right? I mean, we came out of COVID. The guy is this, teenager who's a little bit outside of the realm, feeling isolated, so on and so forth, goes into 4chan, gets involved with games that are Nazi adjacent, that are super, right wing. And then, he's dressing up as Donald Trump back in 2019 for Halloween. And he's using all of these emojis and these things that are nuanced online, apparently, to people that followed these types of things, particularly in that age bracket, but cause and effect. COVID, isolation, online, go deep, get into these things where their minds become what they are, on top of the fact that he came from a very conservative family. I think dad had some degree of involvement with law enforcement. He's very adequate with a gun, as are most people throughout the West, especially Texas and everywhere else. These guys are born and bred with guns, hunting. They know how their way around guns. But when you look at the whole thing and you line it up, especially with all of the other sort of craziness in the world from Gaza and fascism and all of these other elements that are baked in, you look at this and you're like, am I watching a movie? Because it's like it could be the who done it and go whatever direction, especially when you get that stuff that we saw on the text yesterday from the FBI that seemed to be created. Like, did he talk in that language? And they're like, it seems like they're trying to drive people into this movement, this clarion call of fascism against what, trans, I suppose, as a starting point to justify things that we've seen step and repeat in history. We all have been talking about this, and this is good for us as a society to consider, right? In 1933, it was Ernst Rove that was assassinated. He was a Nazi lieutenant by a Jewish person because of all the craziness that was going on between fascists fighting communists, and then, of course, deportation of Jews to Poland. Similar scenarios, and then all of a sudden, here comes this assassination that galvanizes this fascist movement that then becomes Kristallnacht. Very foreshadowing and very foreboding and very terrifying and crazy to consider that Stephen Miller is, of course, Jewish. That's a nutty kind of part of this as well.
It's amazing that he's Jewish. He supports anti-Semitism. I think this actually shows something that you've spoken about. This is all about corruption. All the other things are ancillary. It's all about corruption. It's all about the money. It's all about these particular issues and have little to do. Race and all these things are the externalities that they're using to put this out. So I think to close out on Jimmy Kimmel, I hope he sues. I hope more people get engaged, and I hope people find a way. And I think that's some of the job that we have to do to make these companies who are acquiescent to the fascist model to have them pay. Because as I think it was Lawrence O'Donnell who made it clear, if you are expecting corporations to somehow be the defenders of democracy, dream on. After all, no company and no corporation is in fact a democracy. So the fascist model fits them well. It's interesting. Lana Foley says, Candace Owen is thinking this is a political setup by the government. I mean, if Candace Owen, which is a part of the cabal, thinks that, one should probably be a bit concerned. Tommy says, how can it be okay for a rabble-rouser spewing hate and violence, and it's not okay for a TV comedian to push back? Very true. And Wendy Bussier says, yes, Kimmel, we should be fighting back. Anyway, let me just say this. When you made the con, you exposed a whole lot in not only the mortgage industry, but in the entire financial system. Now we have Donald Trump trying to take up one of the sacred cows in our financial sector, the Fed. What are your thoughts, first of all, on what's happening with the Fed? Started with what they did to Lisa, I can't remember her last name, the Fed governor that they tried to get rid of.
Okay, now hold on to your seats. You're about to witness Patrick Lovell as the Tasmanian devil, because I'm going to do a whirlwind of vortex to bring all of this stuff into stark focus that not everybody needs to understand. Now, you and I have talked a lot. I have incredible respect for everything that you do, and we have a slight disagreement on the word capitalism. You tend to realize that what we're in the midst of is the exploitation and capitalism gone insane, crazy, in a sense that now it's off the rails. And this is the problem, right? At the end of the day, what I'm here to tell you is that it's not capitalism, or at least I'm going to make the argument. What we're talking about here is we're not a democracy and we don't function as a capitalist system. We are a corporate fascist state undergirded by the mafiocracy that is guaranteed by the full faith and credit of the United States that is now fueling fascism. So anybody who knows history and corporations are autocracies in their own right. They're supposed to have board of directors, yada, yada, yada. We know that doesn't work, especially what we're seeing with Elon Musk, especially right now, right? But to back into your scenario based on the Fed, I'm going to give you maybe 6 hashtags for everybody to consider, okay? Lisa Cook, which was your question about the Fed board governor, who's being, and just won as a result to stay on the Fed because Donald Trump is accusing her illegally through the FHA board governor that got information illegally, that she was involved with falsification of records based on 2 houses that she was proclaiming as a primary residence, because the intent was that maybe she was getting a better rate on the second house that didn't qualify. So therefore, he could fire her for cause. Why does he want to fire her for cause? He wants to get his people and the Federal Reserve, that is supposed to have independence from the executive branch, because the full faith and credit of the United States has got to be run by the professionals. Because if you understand the actual Federal Reserve, you understand that it's just a Goliath in terms of all of the different needles. You're an engineer. Just imagine being in NASA and being able to be in mission control and understanding all of those incredible technicians that are responsible for the safety of the flight to wherever that NASA mission may go. That would be the equivalency for the economy of the Federal Reserve. But here's where it gets really freaking tricky based on our work, The Con, that reveals everything that has manifested, quite frankly, the last 4 decades that have led to this moment, because it's all been a continuum, and this is the consequence. Donald Trump didn't invent corruption. He's certainly been involved with corruption his entire career. And quite frankly, we all know that every denial for him is a proclamation of guilt, right? Everything that he projects onto others,
He projects, yeah.
it's the lie, deny, switch the blame, and implicate scenario. So he's accusing Lisa Cook, the Fed board governor, of mortgage fraud. Donald Trump has been involved with mortgage fraud for 4 decades. Letitia James, the state AG of New York, brought a $450 million settlement that they won because Donald Trump was guilty of mortgage fraud to, ironically, Deutsche Bank, because of all of these lies on mortgage fraud that weren't just saying I got 2 residences. And by the way, just again to reiterate, it was proved yesterday, because of what happened in the court that was hearing the case before it might go to the Supreme Court, that Lisa Cook didn't do what she was accused of.
She called it a vacation home.
Right. And by the way, in your state of Texas, Governor Abbott and your Ken Paxton have done this with many, many homes, as it turns out.
Over. Yeah.
And the entire cabinet for Donald Trump is guilty of the same thing. So there's that, right? But moving forward to this whole scenario that people have got to wrap their heads around is that the mortgage fraud that Donald Trump did was so ridiculous that he increased the volume of his penthouse 300%. Okay. And he increased the square footage based on comparables and the way this is supposed to work with UDAP codes and everything else, like 90%. Okay. Just ridiculous, over the top lies on applications to get favorable loans. That's what he was doing. Now, Letitia James, in that case, and if you watch our work at The Con, at do.thecon.tv, you'll realize the blueprint of all of this, which is what created what we're talking about in tens of millions of cases that blew up the world in the 2008 great financial crisis, of which Donald Trump was up to his eyeballs in. Okay. So Letitia James gets the civil settlement, but as it turns out, she doesn't take the con to Deutsche Bank. She said that Donald Trump was doing fraud upon the bank. What she didn't realize was Deutsche Bank was involved. And by the way, incidentally, doing it because they were laundering money for none other than Vladimir Putin. They were busted with billions and billions of dollars of fines over decades because they've been laundering billions of dollars for the Russians into Donald Trump real estate. Okay, do you want me to pause right there?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so I just connected Federal Reserve, Lisa Cook, mortgage fraud, Deutsche Bank, Donald Trump, and Putin. Okay, that's the sort of scenario that we're looking at that is now lasting decades. Now, here's the craziest thing of all, right? So within this sort of big panoply that people are looking at, in terms of fascism, we're here. How did this happen? Well, you can't get fascism without corruption. You have to have the fuel to be able to control the system, to be able to allow this insanity to happen, because the only way you can get fascism is if you destroy the law. Are we all not saying that Donald Trump is lawless, right? We all know it, right?
Yes.
And he has now controlled the Department of Justice. He pulled a coup d'etat to get Pam Bondi, who incidentally is involved with mortgage fraud beyond your comprehension because she was a tool for Bank of America during the great financial crisis, and that was her ticket to get into the game. But moving forward with the Federal Reserve, now this, I'm going to throw in one other aspect of this, or two at the moment, the Supreme Court. Because what we know from the Fed governor situation with Lisa Cook is this case may go to the Supreme Court. Why? Because Donald Trump wants to control the Federal Reserve, just as he's controlled, SCOTUS, as well as, the Department of Justice, FBI, and so forth, right? So he wants to get his, guys in there to basically do anything he wants. And what have we seen Donald Trump do the last few days? Did he not pocket $2 billion from UAE?
From the Emiratis, yeah.
Okay, so we know that he's made over $5 billion in crypto. This is a guy that's supposed to get paid $460,000 a year and be the most powerful guy on the planet. But he's already gotten in 9 months. What are we talking about? $7 billion or something to that effect?
Imagine that. Yeah, real money.
Okay, so this is what's going on as they're actually going to wage war on what? Trans to start with. And then we know how that goes. It goes for everybody afterwards, right? So going back to the Federal Reserve. So mortgage fraud, Federal Reserve, Lisa Cook, Supreme Court. The Supreme Court 2 years ago, my man, my brother, had a case in front of him that was brought as a class action by the Arkansas Teachers Pension Union, as well as the Pipe Fitters and Plumbers of America, working class folks. They brought a case of a RICO indictment against, of all people, Goldman Sachs. And I say people, corporation, because of what Mitt Romney and Citizens United says, people or corporations. I'm being facetious. The corporation Goldman Sachs. Now, if anybody's ever seen the movie The Big Short qualified a hedge fund investment short on the market because of everything that they showed in the movie that was done by a really well-known trader by the name of Michael Burry. Michael Burry, as it turns out, was a $500 million bet on the collapse of the 2008 Great Financial Crisis. The real Big Short was a guy by the name of John Paulson. John Paulson backed up the Brinks truck, and he ended up winning $20 billion in the 2008 Great Financial Crisis. So what's that have to do with SCOTUS and Goldman Sachs and the Arkansas Teachers Pension Union? Well, as it turns out, John Paulson was handpicking the worst of the worst liars' loans because of documentation falsification and all sorts of deceptive acts and practice, of which, of course, that's what Donald Trump was being accused of for the last 4 years of his first presidency, deceptive acts and practices to con the United States that unfortunately Merrick Garland's Justice Department couldn't bring down the heavy on it, right? Because he got away with it. And now we're living in this insanity. But all of the things that made that possible were the fact that John Paulson was handpicking the worst of the worst liars' loans to sell to the teachers' pensions, the pipe fitters, and the plumbers, and countries all around the world and everything else that took a $4.5 trillion housing bubble, turned it into a $900 trillion global calamity, and then destroyed it, made $20 billion. But here's the thing. That was the case that was in front of the Supreme Court 2 years ago, that, of course, this Supreme Court, as we know, the Roberts Court, they said it was an act of God. Now, let me ask you this. Do you know why they said it was an act of God?
Of course, when you use an act of God, that gets rid of a whole lot of contracts, don't it?
It's because they don't look. They don't investigate. That's the whole purpose. See, the law needs investigation to get the evidence to be able to prove the calamity to take it down. If you take all of that out, you have corruption. So what I'm telling you is that piece goes into the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court allowed Goldman to get away with it. But here's the final kicker of the whole thing that relates to John Paulson. John Paulson, by the way, was on Epstein's Black Book list. I don't know if you know that. Yeah. He's involved with all these billionaires right now going after Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massey because he's trying to get the Epstein files released. And
he better be careful. Massey better be careful.
Because of Paulson. Paulson's going after him. Who is Paulson? The guy who pulled this off. Paulson's one of the biggest contributors to Donald Trump in this corporate revolving door situation. But why wouldn't Paulson want the Epstein files released? Well, maybe he was in it. I don't know if that's the case or not with young girls and yada, yada, yada. But what I can tell you is he was involved with basically laundering all of the ill-gotten gains from Russia through the system into subprime by the billions through none other than Bear Stearns and Liquid Capital, which was directly compositely linked to that was Jeffrey Epstein's hedge fund. And then the end of all of that, after destroying the world, the Federal Reserve had to save the global economy so that we wouldn't descend into a global turmoil. That was the way they looked at it. So they illegally provided tens of trillions of dollars backdoored from the Federal Reserve because the Fed governors, by the way, this ties in the Fed governors, there was a guy by the name of Ned Gramlich, who was the Fed governor out of Philadelphia, who had all of the information that I'm telling you now. And he went to then chairman of the Federal Reserve, Alan Greenspan, who was supposed to regulate markets, because that's what we're talking about right now with the independence of the Federal Reserve. Alan Greenspan had all of the information, all of this was going around, And you know what Alan Greenspan told the world in the aftermath of the great financial crisis?
I don't remember, what did he say?
He said no one saw it coming.
Oh, but it's funny, right? I remember that now, because all of us saw it coming.
And he saw it.
And he got the cards, right? Built on what was the word that was all of us in the business. There you go.
Yeah, but he had the information. What I'm telling you, this is the craziest information of all. So what I just did what we just walked through in a 5-minute span, maybe it was 10 minutes, we just revealed the world.
Let me pause you a second. Let me pause you a second, because, and I should have paused a little bit before. Julie just says, "Can you please make a chart of this?" Too much, and I want you to give them where you are starting to document this stuff for people to see it in a more bite-wise way, so that they don't get all. What happens here is the following. This is very important but complex stuff, and it loses a lot of people. And let me just tell the audience this. Know that there are guys like Patrick going through the law, going through the numbers. You don't necessarily have to understand all of it unless you want to. And the reason he needs to and he wants to do this is so that when you're confronted with that's not true, you can always point back to the reality of what Charlie and his, I'm going to call it the cabal, what Charlie and his cabal has found out. That data will always be there for you to go back to. But I take umbrage with what you say, Julie. I think we need to tell Patrick, come out with a simple chart that then can be corroborated with all this complex information that you're given right here. Go ahead, my brother.
Thank you for that. And I appreciate the question. So what I like to say to everyone is it's not rocket science, my friends. It's racketeering. It's just a crime. And we have the ability and laws to remedy this stuff. But the problem is we have corruption that has now completely overrun the system of law because we have a lawless presidency. So the easiest way to put your head around all of this stuff is the blueprint that we made free. It took us millions of dollars to put this together. We went on years' journey to be able to get this information. And it starts with, in fact, everybody who says the name Lisa Cook, I hope you can learn the name Addie Polk. Addie Polk was an African-American woman who was 91 years old, who lived in her house for 4 decades, who ended up shooting herself in the chest 5 times to commit suicide so she wouldn't go into the streets after she was being evicted from a home that she had lived in for 4 decades. Why? Because she was a victim of documentation falsification by people who were stealing her house. That was the first thing that gets you into the story that reveals the largest racketeering enterprise in history that never ended. You can find that at thecon.tv. Now, further, for those of you who want to change the world, who want to get rid of this monopolization of this robber baron universe that's all fossil fuel driven at the moment, that's creating war, that's destroying everybody, that has all of the elements of systemic racism in our prison and everything else, you have to discover what we've created to solve the riddle, because you have to understand the fight is against corruption. And you can find that at www.thecleannewdeal.org. And I'm always available for questions for anybody who has some. And but I would also encourage you to check out my YouTube page, Patrick Lovell, Truth Bombs the Con.
Yeah, and I think that is essential that people have the different levels in which to understand this, because again, I know you said it's not complicated, it's not rocket science, it is just mere old corruption. But let me just say that your level of involvement in this, Patrick, it's huge, and you've done so much of it, it comes across simple to you. Now, we're kind of running close on time, and we have one other subject that I really want to cover, and that is, and we sort of partially covered it, is, and I'm going to put it this way, fascism is essential to finish the job. And you take that and run.
Look, my North Star is fascism. So I'm Jewish. And I grew up, 23 years after the Holocaust. And I remember being in synagogue with my grandfather crying during the playing of Kol Nidre because of just the absolute horrific reality of the Holocaust. So forever, I've been obsessed with fascism. And what is fascism? The term itself only came to be like what? Because of Mussolini primarily.
Yes.
We've always had tyranny, have we not? Is the United States not the absolute revolution against tyranny? That's the notion of freedom and liberty and justice that you can only have by the law. But the law has to be equal. The people in the system have to have character and they have to have integrity. What happens when they all blow it? When they get involved with being, polarized, and then they take a paycheck, and then they're a slippery slope to being able to do quid pro quo and all of these other things. It's called lying. The entire presidency of the Trump administration and everything that goes into it depends on lies. That's all it is. It's lying. They just lie to you. They lie more and more and more. There's all sorts of psychological components of it. They do it because it's like, look, we want you to be in our church. You look like these people. You sound like us. You're one of us. It's conformity. That's the road into, what becomes a populist move that everybody else who's not a part of your look, feel, tone, whatever the case is, skin color, that they could then create the other. The long and the short of it is we've dealt with this kind of stuff for probably the entirety of humanity, to be quite frank with you. But when it becomes the extension of the state, when the police are basically there not to protect and to defend the liberty and the rights of those that they are supposed to serve, but to use the guns against the people that they regard as the other, that then is fascism. But none of that can happen without A, conformity, but B, the corruption to make it so. And so what my message and my mission to everybody out there is, people, you got to wake up. This isn't some sort of like liberal call to arms, like, please, we can find a spirituality amongst us and everything else. Because no matter what your ideology is, no matter what your faith is, right, there is a truth. Truth in the law is based on evidence. It's based on the mechanics of intent. It's based on what the laws are there to prevent to do. And I can assure you that the United States Bill of Rights and the Constitution was not written so that a 5-time bankrupt, 6-time, bone spur, 34 convicted felon who's stolen billions of dollars, who thinks that 300 million people died as a result of Venezuelan drug use, could be the commander in chief to use our military forces that we pay for against we the people.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. I want to start closing out with a few statements here, and it goes as follows, people. Patrick is absolutely right. We are no longer on a path to fascism. We are now a fascist state. And the issue is, how do we get out of it? And right now, as it is, more than likely tomorrow it's going to be announced that Larry Ellison, the founder of Oracle, yeah, will be the owner or 80% owner of TikTok. We have the owner of Facebook, the owner of Threads, the owner of Instagram, the owner of WhatsApp, the owner of, Mr. Zuckerberg is now owning just about all the other social media. And then, of course, we have X being held by Musk. So every form that we use as a community to communicate right now is owned by likely 3 or 4 billionaires. We now have our mainstream media being purchased by right-wingers. As you can see what happened with Jimmy Kimmel and the company who decided we will stop taking Jimmy Kimmel because we own all these TV stations. I can't remember the name of that conglomerate right now, but now under the auspices of Disney, one person gets to control what you see, what you hear. Of course, we also have CBS who have capitulated to Trump. So we no longer have a mainstream media that even purports itself to be objective or free at all. Go ahead. I have more to say, but I want you to interject, please.
I'm so sorry. I hope I didn't interrupt you, but thank you for that. Because, first of all, CBS, by the way, is owned by Larry Ellison, because that's Paramount. And by the way,
who did he put in charge? And who is one of the people he just put in charge? Big Substacker?
That's right. What's her name? Yeah, I know. And she's like 40 years old, and she's like ultra right wing. And yeah, again,
right.
Right, brother's mine. I can't think of her name at the moment. But the point that I want to make, the front page of the New York Times today, with a gentleman, by the way, who was in the con and very influential in my work, wrote an op-ed because he's tied into all the big power moves and everything else, and he's done all the work on Paramount for decades, going back to Sherry Lansing in the 80s and 90s. But he just revealed that it appears that Larry Ellison's group is going to also make a bid for HBO Time Warner. So that would even get even smaller. Okay. So to your point, what I'm trying to say is, to your people out there, I knew this when my journey started in 2011, quite frankly. Okay.
Mhm.
Because my experience with the 2008 great financial crisis was not revealed in mainstream media. And I started pulling the threads and I realized they were covering the entire story. Right. So that's why we had to make the con. Now, as it turns out, the entire apparatus of our government, the institutions, the Department of Justice, the FBI, the SEC, all the regulators, the AGs, they operate to the tune of about $90 billion a year in budget. They have tens of thousands of employees to do what we had to do in the con. And I can assure you, we didn't have tens of thousands of employees and a $90 billion budget. We got the truth that reveals this entirety of this thing. But I've been saying forever, my friends, that corruption births and fuels fascism. And unless you know how corruption works to create these mega mergers and this oligarchic absolute monopolization through robber barons, or you can call them Confederates or plantation owners. When you have the power in the hands of the few, you have tyranny. And I need to remind everyone that the birth of the United States was because we rebelled, had a revolution against tyranny. That's the whole purpose of the United States.
Now, granted, I want to continue it now as far as because we come out here and we talk about all these things that are wrong. And I don't want people to ever leave our Substack, to leave our feed, to leave what we're talking about in a state of despair. Never want that. I am never in a state of despair. My brother Patrick Lovell is never in a state of despair. You know why? Because we're out there informing and making a difference. This morning on my KPFT 90.1 FM show, our phones weren't working, but our chats were going wild. And you could see within the chats, people wanting to know, what do I do? Just before this show, I came off the streets. I live in a very red, conservative part of Houston in Kingwood, Texas. Very red. And last week after Charlie Kirk's murder, people were scared, especially in this area, what folks would do. So our league of women that are out here on the streets every Thursday protesting against Dan Crenshaw, they stayed home. They said, for this time, we're going to stay home. And I'll be very honest with you. I got scared, not because I would be out there alone. I've done it before with the Occupy movement. But I was scared that these women who have been courageous and going out there, they're working with Indivisible. They're working with Swing Left. They're working with all these other groups. I was scared. Are they going to stop going out? These are brave women. And you know what, Patrick? I said, I was speaking to another activist this morning, and I said, I'm going out there today. I want to see, if I'm supporting these women going out there, I got to go out there and talk to them. And I went out there, and there wasn't the 7 or 8 that are always out there at that corner. There were now 13 out there at that corner. And I got excited and I went and spoke to them. And they said, Egberto, all of us are wearing cameras now because if they get us, we'll know who got us. But we are going to be out here. And so while we are speaking here, realize that the corporation isn't going to save you. Donald Trump isn't going to save you. The Republican Party isn't going to save you. The Democratic Party isn't going to save you. You are going to save you. You going out there like these women on when we have King's Day in October, we want all of you out there. And we have to do this ourselves. We have to do the boycotts. We have to do it from every single angle, but you have got to be there. And let me tell you the part that is always difficult to say. Patrick has a Substack. Patrick has the Count. Patrick has his YouTube. Patrick has all these platforms that he's starting to build for all of us to see now. Please check him out. Even if you don't support it financially, which if you can, you should, please watch the information, go to these pages because that helps as well, because we have to be in this together. And of course, in a self-serving manner, please subscribe, whether you are a paid subscriber, a free subscriber or not to Egberto Off the Record, please do it. We hope that it's a paid subscription because we need the support to match what these guys are doing. But one of the reasons we are out here, not once a day, but several times a day, one of the reasons we write, Patrick writes, Patrick's in the field, we are all in the field, is because it's not going to be done by government. And I love government because government is we the people, but they're the representatives that are not executing right now. It's going to be you. It is going to be you. Patrick, it's you. Egberto, it's you. Patrick, give me a closer.
Well, I want to thank you. You're inspiring to me. You represent everything that I believe is right with this country. And I just think you're really a terrific force of nature for good. And I would applaud everybody going to Egberto at every time they can to learn more, to be in the loop. But I'll close with something that I like to close with all the time, that I think that really encapsulates everything we've talked about. I frequently say, and you want to start it, end on a positive note, and I'm going to end up on an explosive positive note here. First and foremost, there's always, everything is possible, right? Both good and bad. Any outcome is possible. It depends on how you make it so, right? And what I've learned on this journey is that, and we can all see it around us, and and this puts kind of a framing in the mix of what we are. So when you live in light, you live in truth. When you lie, you're depraved. When you have the truth, in my opinion, you're bulletproof, because if you live in truth, you'll live forever. And when you lie, inside you die. So my message to people is to stop lying and stop buying lies. And if you, me, and everyone you see who isn't a Nazi, who believes in liberty, integrity, dignity, decency, beauty, sustainability, if we merge in unity, we have to come out of our silos. There is a plan to move forward, and we've created the Clean New Deal, which is the plan to overcome corruption with the law. That's the most important thing. With the law, using the law to take down the corruption, that will be our destiny to end the misery of tyranny, but to unleash the renaissance of possibility, onwards and upwards.
Thank you so kindly, Patrick. Folks, this is Patrick Lovell, producer of The Con. Please check out his new website at
www.thecon.tv and thecleannewdeal.org.
Folks, you have a wonderful rest of your day. Check out, remember, we're coming back with Politics Done Right at 3 p.m. Central. Going to prepare for that right now. Hey, Patrick, it's an honor having you on, my brother.
You keep it up, and I'll be here by your side every step of the way, my man. Take care.
Ditto, ditto, ditto.
All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed that. We are a little bit past time, but I just want to tell you guys that, we got to keep going on this, and we will keep going on this. We won't ever give in. You see, it took these guys 40 years to do what they've done, and we were asleep. And we were asleep because we never believed that things would go back. We never believed we would lose Roe v. Wade again. We never believed that money would become speech. We never believed that corporations would definitely maintain their people's status. We never believed that there would be a McCutcheon that allows infinite amount of money into politics. We never believed any of this would occur. We just knew that we grew out of that. We just knew that democracy was on an ever forever path on its own. That it was self-sustaining. It's not. It's not. You know what self-sustaining? Capitalism is self-sustaining. Me and Patrick have a little bit of difference in that subject, but it's mostly because of how he defines it and how I define it. But I tell you, it's gonna take all of us, and I mean this from the depths of my heart. I've been using the Red Scare as an example of this type of situation that we jumped out of. But I'm starting to rethink that. And the reason I'm starting to rethink that is because of the internet and the speed with which things can do. The reason I'm reconsidering that is because of AI and what AI can do. And the reason I'm reconsidering it as well is, whereas between the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, we were on the ascent in people getting smarter. We were on the ascent in, as progressives, as people became more progressive, we got knowledge base moving forward. Never in my mind had I imagined that we would be a country that simply basked in its idiocy. That we would be a country that basked in its ignorance. And that we would start to glorify ignorance. Never in my mind. So I in rethinking whether this is a parallel to both Reconstruction or a parallel to the McCarthyism, it's not. this is new. Of course, it's always something new. But it's something that to win, something to beat, we have got to engage and remain engaged. I got to get out of here. I'm 3 minutes overdue. I want to thank all of you for listening. I want to thank all of you for sharing. My name is, I love you all, first of all. I want to always end to make sure I put that in there because, first of all, we have to do a hell of a lot of loving on each other if we're going to make this change. Because what the other side try to do is push a whole lot of hate. Let's reflect that hate into love. Got to get out of here. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. You guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out! Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.